Yeah, we just did roll call and had established quorum, and
So we'll do the pledge. You didn't do that earlier.
No.
Okay. Okay, let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, let's start with the approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Sophia.
I'll let you do that part.
Sorry, I just wanted people on the TV to see who did the second and who did the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. 4-0.
Okay, next is communications. We have public comments. Is there anyone from the public who would like to give comments? No. Okay. Moving on to employee organizations report. CUTA, is anyone here from CUTA to give a report? Okay, no. CSEA, anyone from CSEA? No. Okay, moving right along. Board members report. Sophia, could you start us out, please?
Yeah, just very briefly, thanks everyone for all the hard work this year. I know we thanked everybody a couple of weeks ago as well because school's let out, but I just want to put a special shout out thank you to the board and to the superintendent and all our staff who work most of the year around, and hopefully I'm hopeful and definitely encourage you all to take a little break and take care of yourselves this summer as well. I think that's really important so we come back ready to roll next year and pick up where we're leaving off. So and I'm excited for the items on the agenda today, and so let's do it.
Thank you, Sophia. Okay, Kim.
I concur wholeheartedly with Sophia in thanking everybody for all of their efforts this year. It truly has been a good year, even with all of the challenges. And I am appreciative for just that different rhythm of the summer and getting together before school starts again with the board. I know we haven't scheduled anything yet, but our normal practice is to get together for some type of planning and just a little bit more in kind of engaged topics to cover with the board in a retreat style meeting. And as important as the agenda items are, that relational aspect gives us a time to collaborate and kind of sync up with one another. And I think that's going to be really important as we go into the fall, and looking forward to hopefully a more normal cadence for the education portion, but also very much looking forward to some of our larger planning items. So thanks in advance. Take care.
Thanks, Kim. Lizette.
Sí, buenas tardes a todos. Quisiera desearles un feliz verano a todos, darles las gracias como las demás de mis compañeras han dicho. Gracias a todos, a Rosy, gracias por siempre estar aquí apoyándonos, ya que muchas veces uno no sabe todo el trabajo que se tiene que dedicar y poner para estar en estas juntas. Gracias a Leticia por hacer tantas cosas para los niños en el verano, y ojalá que eso realmente nos ayude para seguir adelante y mejorar, ya que nos afectó mucho todo esto de la pandemia. Gracias a todos los que están aquí, desde el camarógrafo al personal de tecnología del distrito. Muchas gracias a todos. Y ojalá que tomen, como dicen las demás de las compañeras, tomen este tiempo para poderse cuidar y pues otra vez recargar las baterías para empezar otro año nuevo, porque aunque pensamos que todavía falta un poco, el tiempo pasa volando a veces, y ya cuando menos esperamos ya estamos de regreso. So, muchas gracias y ojalá que todos estén cuidándose y que todos estén bien y que todos estén apoyándose unos a los otros. And I just said thank you. But I want to thank everybody from, everybody from behind the scenes, from, from like example, Rosie, who's, not always on camera, but it takes a lot to just get us going. I mean, we just show up, but I mean, the fact that this is set up and agendas are made and everything, just thank you so much, Rosie, for everything. Thank you for everyone who helps to, get this going. And hopefully you take this summer to recharge and get ready so that we can continue to improve, since the pandemic did hit everybody pretty hard. And as a community, hopefully we're all taking care of each other. We're being, supportive and just recharging and getting ready, because when you least expect it, we're back in action. And thank you, Leticia, for all the summer opportunities and everything you've been doing. And just thank you, everybody, for doing such a great job. Thank you.
Thanks, Lizette. And I'll just wrap it up that kind of the same thing everyone else said. I know it's been a hard few years for our staff here, and I hope people are taking the chance to recharge this summer, although I know many of you are still working, but maybe get a vacation in there. Everyone needs that. So it's been a hard few years, but I'm looking forward to this year not being so hard, hopefully, and being able to, kind of reset and get going again. So that's all I have to say. I'll pass it on to you, Dr. McFedrich.
I just noticed, Mr. Tchaikovsky, you came in, and did you want to make public comment, or are you just here for? Okay, thank you. Okay, and I want to thank Peter Tchaikovsky for the great coverage he always gives us in the Half Moon Bay Review, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate our time with you, and so I just wanted to make sure you didn't have a public comment tonight. I do want to speak a little bit. First of all, I want to thank the board for coming together. Ms. McCammett can't be here. She's away with her family. But I want to thank the board as we start summer and look forward to having no board meeting in July and coming back in August and starting to talk about some heady topics like workforce housing, the beginning of the equity audit, the beginning of strategic planning, et cetera, et cetera. I often will review sort of things that are on the consent agenda. Not that there's many public here tonight, but in case anybody is watching this later so they know what was approved on the consent agenda. Or not that it's been approved, what is on the consent agenda. Because we will get to the consent agenda and then the board will be asked to approve it. So on the consent agenda tonight is a designation of representatives to CIF. The high school does this every year, and as you know, Andy Boysen is going to be the new principal. Mr. Nazar is retiring. We met with him today. He's in his last week. Mr. Boysen and Ms. Tower and the athletic director, Brennan Roth, will be our designees to the CIF. There is an approval of disposal of obsolete textbooks. A lot of these things seem like they're really small, but they're actually a lot of work, and I want to thank Dr. Bhatia in particular and other staff members like Ms. Forrester here for the work they've done. You will see tonight an approval of addendum to the adoption of the new English Language Arts, English Language Development curriculum. I have told the board and everybody that I can meet, I think this is some of the most important work that we're finally getting to a district-wide English Language Arts curriculum, and I want to thank Dr. Bhatia and all the different stakeholders you worked with to get that approved and piloted this year, so thank you very much. There's also a ratification of a Music for Minors MOU, a contract with Music for Minors and Art of Education University, so we can make good on our the board members who have been on that committee. This is a labor of love and something that many people have been involved with. So I want to thank Dr. Bhatia too for leading that work also. There's the certificated personnel report, the classified personnel report. There's a new MOU establishing a new expanded learning professional position for CSEA, just to make sense of this. Of course, we do have extended learning opportunities money from the state, and Rosalva Segura, I just want to call out, has helped build the Eagle Club to sort of provide after-school services to many students over there. In the portables, it used to be the kindergarten temporary housing, and that's been fantastic, and where also TK will be, and is a more inclusive kindergarten for our students with special needs also. So I just want to call that out. We have a new expanded learning professional job description that we negotiated with CSEA. There are new grant and categorical multi-funded positions that are being called out tonight. Ms. Forrester and Dr. Bhatia worked on these job descriptions. including child development program supervisor for our increased focus on child development, early childhood education, and also a coordinator of instruction, categorical grant programs, and special projects to be paid out of grants and categorical funds to help with our curriculum and instruction, because Dr. Bhatia has been doing so many of these things on her own. There are also some new job titles and descriptions for fiscal director and technology director, just to help us clean up. You will see a org chart tonight presented that Ms. Forrester and Dr. Bhatia have helped us work with also. And then you will see approvals to increases to non-bargaining unit salary schedule. And this includes an approval of a change to the unrepresented salary schedule, where we have been trying to right size and make more sense, more rational sense of those jobs. Some of our unrepresented management, for example, for whatever reason, the Cunha principal was making less than the Hatch principal. It didn't make sense. It's a smaller school over there, and it's an elementary school. So we did make some tweaks, and that's available on, for the public to view. There was my own contract renewal, and so I want to thank the board for considering that and talking about that and negotiating that with me. And then you'll see a lunch service contract. At the time of posting last Friday, we did not have bids for this. We were getting them on Friday and couldn't really open them till Friday afternoon, and then had to decide on Tuesday. Tonight we are recommending a lunch master proposal. Lunchmaster used to work for the district. We are changing over lunch providers because the last lunch provider could not provide for us. And so we put out a request for proposals. We got 2, and the Lunchmaster is negligible difference, and we'll be getting about $100,000 more in service, but we will be getting more money from the feds and the state for this meals, for free breakfast and free lunch. There were no William uniform complaints. The board policy updates are basically pro forma as recommended by California School Boards Association, and there were the minutes. I know that's boring to go through the consent agenda, but I think it's important to do so that everybody knows that we're not like hiding anything, and you don't have to read the fine print. You could just listen to the superintendent drone on and on about it. So finally, I want to say, I want to thank Debbie Silvera and Danielle Robles and Brenda De Jesus and Dr. Bhatia, of course, and Ms. Forrester, and everybody, all the teachers, all the big lift workers, all the library workers, all the different people that are working together this summer to make stuff happen on this campus and the Hatch campus. And we look forward to having a July rest, hopefully, all of us, and we'll see you back in August. Oh, we should talk about closed session. Do you mind, did we talk about this? No reportable action. Okay, thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And I'm glad you went through the consent agenda, because I actually was thinking the same thing. There's so much work that goes into this consent agenda, and sometimes it's just like motion, second, approved, go on. But I do want to acknowledge the work that goes into all these things, and that I read every single page of this agenda every meeting. So I do see the work you're doing. So I know sometimes it seems like we gloss over it, but it's important work, and I think we're ready to approve it now. Could I have a motion and a second to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Sophia.
Second.
Thank you, Kimberly. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Moving on to general business. Our first action item is the 2022-2023 Local Control Accountability Plan and 2021-22 Local Control Accountability Plan Local Indicator Report approval. Dr. Bhatia.
There we go.
Good evening, President Alexander, Governing Board, colleagues and community. I'm back here today to present the local indicator LCAP presentation, which is a little bit different than what was presented last board meeting. We do have our almost final LCAP. I do want to point out that the LCAP included in the governing board packet, in our board packet, we still have San Mateo County Office of Ed Partners reviewing it. They may give us some input. We're very close. I think we're at 95%. We will get their blessing through an official letter, and should there be significant changes, we will bring back the big LCAP and give you, probably on a consent agenda, some of the changes. If there aren't significant changes, we will just proceed and update that on our website. I'm here today in sharing also a state, it's accountability through the state, where we here to present our local indicators based on all the local measures. Let's make sure. I don't think this is working, Rosie. Oh, there we go. Okay, so
You're controlling now, Leticia.
I'm sorry?
You're controlling the.
I'm controlling it now? Okay, great. So we have, what was presented last LCAP was mainly the state performance indicators. And basically there are two LCFF indicators. The state performance indicators are usually in the rainbow color. These data and metrics are presented to the public through the California dashboard. Most of these indicators, at least the academic indicators, are based on the CASP. Because we have not administered the CASP due to COVID-19, we do have a big gap between 2019 and 2022. I am happy to say that we did administer the CASP battery of assessments this year. We continue to administer LPAC, so we are looking forward to looking at the state indicators and being able to compare that to 2019. Now, in lieu of that data, we did use local assessment data that was presented to you at the previous LCAP meeting, the LCAP presentation. But for today, we are going to focus on the local performance indicators, and we'll proceed with that. Okay, here we go. So the local indicators on the right, we have 5 of them. We have local indicators on basic conditions, local indicators around parent engagement, access to broad course studies, school climate, and then the implementation of academic standards. But the first indicator is around the basic conditions. Now, we did work with Ms. Forrester and her team, who did provide information from our local tool called EPIC, to take a look at the percentage of highly qualified teachers. And this is one of the metrics that we use to ensure that we are providing our students with highly qualified teachers this year. And this is a gap that was seen across the state of California. And because of the severe substitute teacher shortage, we did drop from 100% to 97% of teachers being highly qualified. The main reason, though, is that we were hiring teachers that were on emergency credentials, and about mid-year, that grace period ended, which is the main reason why we had that 3% drop. So I did want to explain that. And we do want to say that I know that our Ms. Forrester and her team will continue to work on partnering with local universities, partnering with the County Office of Education to ensure that we're supporting our aspiring teachers in clearing their credentials. And again, I want to give my hats off to Ms. Forrester, because she just has hit the ground running and is really looking at recruiting internally, recruiting our own people, our own students, graduates from Half Moon Bay High to come and work. And so please keep in mind that we do meet the objective just by presenting, there is no actual objective of a certain percentage. For the local indicator presentation, the objective is met as long as we present it in a public board meeting. And here are some of the actions that we'll continue to work on in regards to our workforce, continue to work on retainment of the highly qualified teachers that we do have, continue to recruit and offer professional development. Okay, and priority 2. This is around the implementation of priority standards. And in particularly, because of COVID-19 and what we have seen post-COVID-19, we see that again, and you've heard this statement before, we want to make sure that we're meeting Maslow's before Bloom's, because our kids are still in high need of meeting their social emotional needs before we continue to add on the academics. And so this will continue to be a priority as we're measuring our local progress, and the local indicator of priority 2 is the full implementation of multi-tiered systems of support. Our director, Martha Ladd, continues to build this framework and work with our teams, and all of our departments will be working together over the summer to take a look at these main markers of making sure that we train around MTSS, making sure that we continue to align district-wide curriculum. As Dr. McFetrich mentioned, this is a big success that this is the first time we will have an ELA, ELD aligned curriculum across elementary, but we want to continue. We still have to look at science and social studies over the next few years. That will continue to be our goal in the curriculum instruction side, as well as Common Core state standards. So we will plan on running both trains at the same time, the SEL, supporting students around SEL, but also supporting them in making sure that we assess and we meet students where their content knowledge is, and try to close that achievement gap by aligning standards, but also training. And the objective here is we want to continue to monitor both qualitative and quantitative measures, continue to administer surveys for students, for our families, and increase particularly professional development, continue with many of our committees, such as the Curriculum Advisory Committee. We did have actually a training with our leadership team over the last week around our SST manual that again is systematic and is going to be the same student study team system across the whole district. This is the first time that we will have a systematic SST process to ensure that we're able to address the needs of our students, whether they're academic or social. And we'll continue to have some of that training at the side. We do plan on assigning site leaders, site teachers, along with the principal, to ensure that the SST process is rolled out smoothly, make sure that our parents are aware of how to ask for help, et cetera. Another goal of ours is, well, we met the goal, but that we are looking at the ELA and ELD adoption now at the secondary level. I know that the secondary level has a lot of subjects, but we really want to start with a core of ELA, ELD math, and then move on to the science and social studies. And again, here on the right, you're going to see some of the progress steps that we need. Priority 3, parent engagement. So we did administer the Panorama survey. We had 403 respondents. And we did overall have favorable responses in regards to engagement. We did have a drop in some of the responses from our families regarding school climate. And again, this is the gap that we have already seen in regards to the need of addressing more the social emotional needs of our students, and really implementing positive behavior intervention systems and making sure that our students are feeling heard and welcome. And this is going to be, again, the initiative around our multi-tiered systems of support. 26% of our families responded favorably around family engagement. Although it is an increase of 4% from the previous year, keep in mind that it has been the COVID years, and we have not been able to really host family engagement events as we have pre-COVID. So we feel that's the reason why that indicator is low, but we want to continue to make sure that we involve our parents and students in supporting us in regards to engagement. And again, on the right, you're going to see some actions that we'll continue to administer and increase in regards to survey data, parent data, as well as parent committees at the sites. Then here we do have priority 4, which is the LCAP indicator around academic standards. And although I did not include the self-reflection tool, I did include just a snapshot of what it looks like. And so particularly around ELA, ELD, last year, if you look at the second line around the analysis, English language development and English language arts common core state standards in ELA, we were at a level 1 and 2. But now that we have completed the adoption, we are self-rating ourselves at 3 because that's just part of the work. We still, in order for us to even be considered at a 4 or 5, we would need to continue to train, to monitor, to give our teachers the supports, the release time for planning and implementation to fidelity of the program. So we do expect the next year particularly to really focus on unpacking the new ELA, ELD curriculum and giving our teachers those tools so that they can they have been trained and be effective in the implementation of the curriculum that was adopted, our Adelante benchmark curriculum. And to the right again, we'll continue to look at survey data. Parents also are an instrumental part of adoptions. We're looking at scope and sequences and making sure that our parents understand what the academic expectation is for the students. So we want to make sure that we work with the curriculum pieces and the home connection parts of the curriculum so that our parents understand this is what we expect and this is what you can do at home to support us with this new adoption. And let's see, the next one is the school climate. Sorry. Around school climate, yes. And so this year we did continue to administer the Healthy Kids Survey, but we're using the year before because I think it was still open. So 59% of the students feel that they belonged in the school. 62% of students were academically motivated. 51% of students felt that they had a caring adult relationship at the schools. That's probably the one that we really want to monitor and make sure that we increase over the next course of the next year, and we want to see an increase. We need to make sure our students feel that connection. And again, COVID-19 made it super difficult for us to form relationships at school, but again, I feel that there is, we see the light at the end of the tunnel and some normalcy coming back to schools, and we definitely hope to increase the belongingness of our students. The next one is the access to a broad course of study. And this basically here, we're looking at the data around A through G requirements, CTE pathways, and the reason why this was a purposeful data piece, particularly in our department, is that A through G is college bound. And sometimes our graduation rate, which is, the bar is a little bit lower than A through G, we want to measure our growth with the highest bar. And that's why we're looking at the A through G completion status of 52.5%. We also want to look at UC CSU entrance requirements and continue to monitor and make sure that that percentage continues to grow over the next few years. And again, next steps, let's continue to look at the school dashboard, look at the prioritization of gap areas, and focus on growth in the subsequent years. And that is our local indicator board presentation. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to respond to it.
Thanks, Dr. Batia. Go ahead.
As it's an action to where you want a motion to approve first?
Yep.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Kimberly.
Some questions. Thank you, Leticia. This is really great, as always. A couple comments and questions. One, to your first point about the staffing qualifications, I think that we have historically looked at credentials as a metric of qualifications, but I do want to kind of reemphasize the point that you made that that isn't the end-all be-all, that we have some really amazing people here teaching on emergency credentials that I think if they go through the filter of Bianca and our district staff, they're highly qualified. You know, obviously there's sometimes more emergency situations, but I think in terms of a more progressive approach to how we recruit and retain individuals, these traditional measures of qualifications, I think are ripe for evolution, if you will. So I'm really grateful that we're looking to grow our own staff and recruit from the community in ways that are supportive, that can get them to that point where they're, highly qualified, whatever the metric is that we're using for that. So I just want to emphasize that point that you made. So thank you for that. Also, about your point about the 2 trains running at the same time, I think that's really important too, that typically we do focus on the academics in public schools. However, the Maslow part is critical, right? So I like the idea, there was a speaker, Victor Rios, who's I think at USC, I want to say, who's really an amazing educational researcher, and his point is kind of what you said about the 2 trains running at the same time. It's like Maslow's and Bloom's at the same time, because that's, you got to kind of take care of both, and because they're both so intertwined. So to the extent that we can continue thinking about how we educate kids academically in a way that addresses their social emotional needs, those are not like 2 separate things. Like even if we have extra social emotional curriculum to focus on that, it doesn't mean the other stuff should be absent the social emotional learning piece. So I appreciate your point about that, 2 trains running at the same time too. And also great progress, I think, in terms of having a consistent SST format across, because I think that's going to make it easier for all staff to fluidly go from one school to another with the same thing. And also for families, as their kids learn and grow, it's not like reinventing the wheel or rediscovering it every time. So to the extent that we could have training for families, or I don't know if it's like a video tutorial that they could say, this is how SST works, something like that, that people can kind of have a sense of what to expect. That could be helpful, as well as your point about training families on the curriculum. I'm always cautious when it comes to parent engagement, because I think it's really important that we engage families in ways that are meaningful to them and culturally relevant, but I also want to make sure we're not asking too much of families, because that's also our job, school to educate the kids and work with them in partnership, but also to not put too much on, onus on them. And sometimes I know as a parent, I can say it feels that way, because it's like, well, parents should be checking School Loop like every day or every week. It's like, that's a lot to ask of most families. So I think it's always, to me, that balance of engaging parents in really effective and efficient ways to really, really show that we value their time is really important. So that's my point on that. And then Panorama was good. I think, I'm guessing that we had 712 responses, not respondents, just based on how.
Responses, yes.
So just thinking as a parent who myself filled out 2. I'm 1 respondent, but filled out 2 responses because I have 2 kids in the system. So just something, as we, try to get it very, very clear, because probably a lot of those were duplicates. As I'm thinking about how many families that represents, it's probably a little bit less than 700, but it's good to know that we're representing 700 of our 3,000 or so kids, which is actually not bad. It's actually better than I thought we would be this year because of the circumstances. So that's pretty good. The student survey responses were clearly low, like if we, obviously, as you commented, which is not entirely surprising. But I want to make sure we look at the flip side as well, which is like when we have 51% of students feel they have an adult caring relationship, that's like the positive side. The negative side is like 49% don't. And that's really, really huge. That's a big number. That's like every other kid. That's like if it was us, it'd be like up to Lizette is good and the rest of us aren't. So I'm curious how we are planning to share those results from the Panorama survey with our staff in the schools, so they can also appreciate this is like really an issue.
Yes.
And not just that particular, but all of the outcomes for the students in particular. Like the flip side, if you look at it like the opportunity, there's a lot of opportunity there. So I'm curious how we're going to weave that into.
So one thing, and I just had a conversation with Alyssa Jaramillo today, where we're training our principals, right? Like they basically were like in triage mode this year.
Yeah.
And I'll be, our teams, Martha, Ms. Forrester, myself, will be training our principals in looking at their own school data. And the expectation for us is that they set up faculty meeting time to go through, because the Panorama can be, well, that's the beauty about Panorama, is that you can easily just click and it goes school specific. And that's one thing that we actually just had a conversation today about. And we'll take a look, because again, this data is super important, particularly, and like you said, yes, it's great that 51% feel included, but what about the other 49%? And that's important for all of our staff to know. And we know, like, it could be a multitude of things that are making the student feel like that, but we need to take the first few weeks of school to really form those student-teacher, staff relationships and give our principals those tools in making sure that we set aside that time in August to really get to know our students. We did, but there was the first year that we came here where we engaged in an activity called My Name, My Identity, where we gave lessons where staff would ask their students, tell me about your name, learn about the history of your name, tell me how to correctly pronounce your name. And that has, it's an initiative actually all across the US, started in Santa Clara County, because it makes a child feel connected. Like, you care enough about me to pronounce my name right, to know my identity. So we do hope we did have a retreat with our principals, and we hope to bring that back next year, because it has been 3 years since we last brought that up. Those are just two things that.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. Because especially, I think we have the opportunity for like the first day students come back to school, like it's a make or break on that first day, really. Like if they go one way or the other way. I think that's, to the extent we could use that like the principal, and especially I think it's brilliant. Of course, it should be at the school level, to the extent that principals can coordinate that for before kids even get to school. I think that's important. Similarly, I think the data on the A to G was also not surprising that it was just 51%, I think it was also, but also to the extent that we can call that out with the context that it's not the expectation that everybody goes to CUC or CSU just because those are their criteria. However, we want to make sure that the majority of our students have that option, you know, whenever, if and when they decide to go, even if they go to community college for a year, the fact that they've, you know, achieved that in high school is going to position them even better to be successful, not only in getting in to a competitive college or university, but to being successful at that college or university. So I think that's something for the high school in particular to take a look at, and also think about it as like, well, that's our opportunity. How can we remove barriers? Because there are barriers all over the place to why that is so low. So kind of the challenge and the action is like, what can I do as a XYZ employee, right, to remove barriers to get kids, you know, into that space where those barriers are removed. What barriers do we have in place? Because some of them are in place for so long, we don't even notice them. It's just process, or it's just the form is like this, or it's just this is how we do it. But there are barriers left and right. So if we can have staff, all staff in their individual roles, take it on as a challenge to remove, to figure out where they are contributing to those barriers, not in a way that makes them a bad person, but more as we're just all part of this machine that's existed for a long time. So that was my thought around that. And I don't know for the A to G if you have data disaggregated for A to G, but I'm guessing it's probably. I think you presented it, maybe you presented it before.
Well, we did,
Yeah.
but last year in the transition of our technology teams, we had two important roles that shifted. Ms. Ann Barreto and also Randy Rudolph. So in that shift and us hiring you, somehow the data wasn't uploaded. So
okay.
we'll need a few months to kind of comb that through, because typically it's fed off of CalPads. So we'll have a year gap, unfortunately, that we won't be comparing apples to apples.
If I may, though, remember, last board meeting, you approved the contract with Inside Education for an equity audit and strategic plan, and that will certainly be data that will be surfaced in the fall by the equity audit.
Very good, thank you so much. And my last comment is just say, again, thank you so much. I can't emphasize enough how cumbersome and bureaucratic this format is that we get from the state to do the LCAP and the budget. It's like so painful to see like all this extra stuff, but hearing you present it, I think it's really clear that you have a clear plan and that you're focused on the right areas and kind of populating in the format that needs to be populated to meet the state requirements. But I'm really confident that we have a really good plan that really addresses kids' most important needs and how we can work together to achieve those needs. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you also. Question about the panorama survey. Are there any open-ended questions to solicit responses?
Yes, we actually had quite a bit of open-ended questions, but again,
I
it's very
understand
hard to present all of them, but we did include a summary. So in the LCAP that's going to approval, in this, the educational partner, this is now we're moving away from stakeholder engagement. They're calling it educational partner engagement in the LCAP, or parent engagement. But in that section, you're going to see a summary of the themes that came out of the open-ended question in the panorama survey.
And did you, in going through that material, did you have any insights?
We did have, I mean, it was pretty much aligned to, I mean, some parents did say, oh, we know that it was COVID, so we wish we could have been more in person. We did hear from some of our Spanish-speaking community, and we've heard that not only through Panorama, but through also just qualitative conversations through our Latinx committees, where our families really would like engagement in their primary language versus the headsets or versus bilingual. And I know we're training our principals up, actually just having conversations with our principals as we are ending the year and setting goals for as we move forward, and making sure that we give those opportunities for Latinx and Hispanic Latino community. We hear a lot about more hands-on and engaging in STEAM. VAPA came up. More opportunities where students are able to engage with like hands-on and project-based learning type of comments. But I'm sorry, I don't have the LCAP right in front of me.
And that's fine.
It is very detailed out in the LCAP under that engagement section. So it was a lot around SEL and MTSS. How can we support our students in wanting to come to school and feeling excited about being a student in school, because the COVID-19 pandemic really, and it's not just Cabrillo, it's happening all over the world.
So one of the things that I would just think about in future surveys is, and it may have been there, you know, what are you excited to come to school for? Just to actually elicit, you know, what those hooks are. And I very much appreciate the emphasis on the emotional learning. That is so very true. The piece I would listen to with curiosity, and I know it's important for students to have that connection with adults. I would just hold and be curious if some of the ones that didn't necessarily say yes to having a connection with an adult at school, whether or not they have, again, follow on another adult in their life, where that connection is. So,
That's important.
it depends on how that question is asked and how that question is interpreted. So just points of curiosity, and I appreciate all you're doing to lean into this and help us learn from it and do the best we can on the part of all of our students.
No, and thank you, Kim, for saying that, because I had mentioned it previously at the previous board meeting. This is just a sliver of data. Same thing like CASP, Panorama Survey, Healthy Kids, it's a sliver of data. And there are multiple other factors and other data pieces, with conversations from the teachers with the students.
The challenge days, I mean, those,
Yes,
you know, the kids, that
we're
like
not-
ripples through, and it may not, kids that participated in a challenge day and had a wonderful experience may not have been the same ones that filled out the survey, so.
Yeah, so we take it as an important piece to know, but like you said, let's start peeling the other layer of the onion to dig deeper as to why. So we definitely know that it's one piece of data, and we know that there needs to be more investigation around why the responses were that way.
Yeah, and just one other closing thought is, and because I know it happens in the classroom, that our children are challenged, and brilliance can happen anywhere, but not always opportunity. And so for students that may be English language learners to also have those challenge opportunities because, and whether it's project-based learning or, some of those experiences, having rich, challenging experiences adds to the social emotional experience that they have. So it's a yes and. I understand the tension there and the priority is on healthy humans, absolutely number one priority. But I hear in the fear of parents that don't necessarily know our district, that they worry that their children are going to be challenged or they're going to get set to the side because they're already English speakers. And I want to reassure all parents that this is a rich and wonderful community through all of the elementary schools, Cunha and the high school, and that your children coming here will be highly successful and part of a wonderful, welcoming community. So just wanted to name that into the space.
I'll go next. Muchas gracias por todo. This is a lot of what Sophia commented at. I completely agree. So she touched on a lot of things. Basically, just all the work. I mean, I started almost 4 years ago, and this is what I wanted to happen like overnight. I was like, why aren't we, using the same curriculum and district-wide? And so it's happening. So I'm really, maybe I'll stay another 4 if people have me to see it play through. But it's so exciting. Thank you for all the hard work. I thought it was just a matter of like giving money and just buying something and then just, but what do I know, So thank you for educating me and thank you for making this happen. It really means so much. Thank you. And, we just got to keep forward and then move on to the next thing. So thank you. And I mean, like I mentioned in the last board meeting, especially with all these, school shootings and all these devastating things that are happening with our kids and violence and guns, that while we wait for laws to change, we can also do our part. And not only as a parent, but as a teacher, a community member, and you highlight these things in this LPAC, this indicator, and it just, to start off, the student-parent relationships and incorporating the parents and having them involved and educating them at the same time, but not overwhelming them. It's very different for different reasons. Some of the parents don't know what questions to ask. They don't know what's happening. But at the same time, you're not going to present everything exactly the same because you have parents who have the language and have the knowledge of, how the system works and getting their kids to higher education and all those opportunities. So it's not going to be the same. And I really appreciate that acknowledgement that things have to be presented because at the end of the day, we are here for the same reason and the same goal, but we are very different. And the way that we see our vision being met is very different. And that's something that, a lot of times gets lost in translation. So thank you. The caring adult climate, is so important. Maybe, sometimes a nice word or just anything, like pronouncing the name of a student just makes such a difference in these kids because you have no idea what they went through or what they're going through. And as adults, we make our choices, but some of these kids don't have choices because they're depending on their parents with whatever they are, have to deal with day by day. So thank you for that. One thing about the parent engagement that I think was really successful for me in my perspective was having presenters like Jerry Lopez, who presented on student achievement, student, success, but in a very culturally sensitive and informative way. It was just very, very good. So I hope we could see more of that. And then the home connections I think that that's such a great opportunity to have our liaisons, be part of that, because the way we connect with different communities is very different. So just being sensitive to that. Thank you so much. And lastly, I have a question. The CASP, is it going to be implemented this year?
It already was.
Oh, just
We did
kidding.
we did administer the CASP. We administered the LPAC. We did have about maybe 30 kids who did not come in to take the CASP, maybe a little bit more. I don't have that number right in front of me, but it was up there, 30 to 40. And it's mainly the independent study students. And so we're crossing our fingers that the state is letting us know, because we have a certain threshold that we need to test at least 95%, I believe. And if we don't meet that threshold, then it affects the California dashboard data. But this is happening across the state, so I think there is some legislation, something at the California Department of Ed saying that they may waive, and hopefully it won't affect our California dashboard, the fact that many districts who had an increased number of kids participate in independent study, the students just didn't participate, and parents were actually waiving. They were waiving the CASP requirement. LPAC, similar thing. The students were absent. Students were, we didn't meet the 100%. This is the first year where now in LPAC, they're required for us to assess 100% of ELs. I think we might have made it at 99%. There was just a handful of ELs who just would not come in. And some of them were independent study ELs. Most of them were. And so once we determine if it is going to affect us negatively on the California dashboard, I'll keep the board, Dr. McFetridge and the team informed. But yes, the CASP, we did try our best to administer CASP and LPAC this year. And so we already received our LPAC results, and we did perform on average to the California LPAC. And next year in the fall, I'll come and present that data to you. The CASP data might get to us probably around August. And so we can present, our teams can present that to you as well.
Okay.
And then school site presentations too. And next year, I think we'll continue to engage in school sites. So we'll make sure that we work with the sites to present their school-based data as well.
Muchas gracias. And what is a point of privilege? I know. I'm going to ask just a yes or no question. Did we fill up the summer school slots? Did we have?
We filled up, last time I checked, every class except 8th grade middle school. So yes, we're super excited about that. I mean, I just went to Hatch earlier on, and we were just having conversations. It's like school never ended. The campuses are filled. The kids are walking on field trips, going to Inkspell, going to the library. Again, we're here until the 8th. So if you would like to visit, just let us know, and we can arrange a time for you to see the wonderful hands-on work that's happening. And our teachers are super excited, our students, our families. I know, I can forward you some newsletters. Maybe I'll send it to Rosie and Dr. McFord. You can share, but it's pretty exciting.
Thank you. Thank
It's
you.
a time where our kids can really kind of relax and get those opportunities, Kim, that you're saying, where they're challenging, but it really motivates them to be in school.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All comments? I just want to say thank you as well. I know this document is a huge undertaking, and like Lizette said, I think a lot of us saw all these things that we wanted to do and change and do better, but it's such a big ship, it takes a while to turn it. So I do feel like on this front and many other fronts, things are changing, and I can't wait to see everything going forward. So thank you for doing this. I don't think we have any more questions. I think we're ready to take roll call. Rosie, please.
This is a mass vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. I didn't hear any no's. 4-0 passes.
Thanks, Rosie. Okay, next. Ms. Bianca Forrester is up with the 2022-23 CUSD organizational charts, and she and I are both freezing. I can see that. She has shawls wrapped around her leg. And the good thing about COVID is that I can wear my mask and I can eat all the chocolate that Kim brings us, and I probably have it all over my face and no one knows because I have this mask on. But the bad thing is that all the doors are open, and I forgot my parka, and Bianca and I are freezing here. So with that, Bianca Forrester, please take us away.
Your mic.
Cool, got it. I'm actually going to take off my mask because it makes it a lot easier for me to talk without it. And to be honest with you, I'm a person with a disability. I know I don't look like it, but I read lips, and I'm pretty much considered legally deaf, and I might have another surgery to have it corrected again. And so I've been struggling to hear all the wonderful things that you all were saying this evening with the masks on. So I did just want to lift that because I think it's also in terms of the equity conversation that we've been having this evening about serving kids, to remember that we have kids among us who really struggle with the masks as well. So no, not at all. Thank you. Good evening, members of the public and the community. This is a wonderful community to have the honor to serve here in Half Moon Bay and the Cabrillo community. And good evening to our board president and to our board members, to our superintendent, Dr. McFetridge, to our assistant superintendent, Dr. Bathia, and to the inimitable and amazing Rosabella Costa. So, yeah. I do want to just digress for just a moment from this because a comment was made today, and just take a moment of appreciation for Dr. Bathia in putting together the funds to ensure this really rich and robust learning program for the summer school. So in my job as Director of Pupil and Personnel Services, I get to approve all the field trips. And the students this summer are on the black tie transportation. And we had groups of students who were at the A's game. And those kids, it was reported back to me today with just so much joy. They said, wow, are we really on this bus? We're like rich kids. This is so nice. And they were so impressed. And the person who took them on that field trip said that the bus driver treated them with so much respect and class and just was so helpful and was wearing a tie. And it's a beautiful bus. It's black tie transportation. And I'm just so grateful that our students are having this incredible opportunity for this enrichment and this growth this summer, and for the incredible work that happened behind the scenes to make it happen. So I just want to hold space for that for just a moment. So in terms of the organizational charts, I guess they're going to roll up. How does this work? Oh, okay, cool. This is my first time doing this. Okay. So as you all know, I was tasked by the superintendent to update the org charts. And it's pretty basic, and I just went through them all. I don't think that I necessarily need to go chart by chart. But one of the things that I did want to mention to all of you about this is that in my role as Director of Pupil and Personnel Services, it's really important for me to be able to analyze who's serving our kids, how many people are serving our kids, where they're serving our kids, how these programs like Leticia was speaking to and like Sean spoke to, Dr. Bathia and Dr. McFetridge spoke to about the equity audit upcoming, right? And so one of the issues here as well is around if we don't have, and we have had some gaps like every other school district. I was on a training for the Ask Us Association yesterday, and there were 77 school districts there, and we are not alone, but not all school districts are up to date on all their evaluations. And so in order for us to have robust accountability structures, we have to have clarity around who's reporting to whom and what kind of services they're delivering to our students. So these are actually really important drivers of our programs and our services, both to look at like what kind of services are we offering kids across our different schools, and who's doing what, and have clarity around that, and use this as the launch pad for the work that we're going to be doing to analyze how well we're doing, really. So I feel grateful to have had the opportunity to work with this incredible group of folks to put this together for you. So this is El Granada, and then you can see Fairlawn View, and then we have Hatch, Kings Mountain, Cunha. I would like to just take a tiny moment here to have a moment of recognition for our Dean of Students. So we have taken this, this position out of the CUTA bargaining unit and into our administrative column. And we've hired an incredible young practitioner right out of San Francisco State, Victor Guzman. I'm thrilled that he's coming on board. He and I have been in regular communication throughout the summer, and I just am delighted to have him joining our team. So you'll see now that reporting to the principal at Cunha is a dean of students and an assistant principal, and it's no longer a TOSA. I did just want to take a minute and highlight that.
We should also note that the former 40%, 60% dean here, Erin O'Connor Brown, is now the El Granada principal. So, and to echo the point that Bianca made, I think it's important, you know, part of the thing that Bianca was charged when she was hired here by both Chief Business Officer Jesus Contreras was about position control, making sure we were using our money efficiently. And then, of course, as Bianca has talked about, having been a principal herself, this notion of accountability. So you will see that this helps us with role confusion that may have existed previous to say, hey, this is what these jobs are doing. And Bianca's also working, as you've seen, in honing the job descriptions. And so that was part of the double move that was in the consent agenda. So I just think that it is important for the public and for the board and for our employees to know that this is about us being accountable to whom we serve, the public we serve, and for our employees being accountable to our students and families.
Thank you, Dr. McFetters, absolutely. So I'm also really excited about this org chart. So you can see this is our Half Moon Bay High School org chart. And thank you for lifting that about Erin O'Connor Brown. I'm really thrilled. I actually didn't know her prior to the interview process, and I was unaware that she's bilingual. And I do also want to surface how grateful I am that we are able to begin to really make some strides on the recruitment and retention plan that I put together a few months ago around recruiting people who are bilingual and people who represent the community, who come from the community that we serve too, in a more equitable way. I mean, I'm just going to say it flat out. I think it's essential that our workforce be reflective of the students we serve. And I take that really seriously. So I appreciate the board and the superintendent for charging me with putting that together. So we are moving into, this is our hope, and once again, I want to express some gratitude here for the collaborative nature of the work that we do at the district office along with Martha Ladd and Leticia Bathia. We were able to find some funds through categorical and grants to bring a little bit of more resource to our high school around some of the PBIS and some of that other support work that we need to do for students. And so we're going to be putting together a student support advisor, and I put dean in parentheses only because of the conceptualization of what does that role kind of look like, not because it is an actual administrative, because this is actually a TOSA for a position. It's going to be, and we're still figuring out the financials behind it, but it's going to be, I think, a 0.6 or a 0.7. And so we're really excited to bring this to bear for the students that we serve at Half Moon Bay High School. And then here is our Pilarcitos, and you can see here in the same way that for Kings Mountain, we had Martha Ladd, the Director of Educational Services, on this org chart. We put me here because I'm going to be working very closely with the former principal at Cunha Intermediate School, James Barnes, in his new role as the Coordinator of Student Services and Special Projects. And one of our chief goals for the 22-23 year will be a successful WASC application. So really looking at that equity piece. And then here we have the Director of Educational Support Services. Oops, is that me? Okay. Sorry. the Director of Personnel and Pupil Services, our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction. And again, I wanted to just kind of highlight a change in the org chart because the Student Data Systems Coordinators actually report under the larger auspices of the CBO. However, they have a critical job vis-a-vis our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction. Our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction needs good data at her fingertips in order to be able to analyze programs and services for the students that we serve. And so I wanted to really highlight and make that clear to everybody in our community. If we're going to build more equitable systems for students, we need to have clear structures that support that. And so this is our Community Engagement, Early Childhood, and Special Services Coordinator. This is held currently by the inimitable Rosalba Segura. I've had such a joy getting to know her in the last few weeks. We've worked really closely together on a lot of these job descriptions. And so you'll see that this entire slide is funded, I believe the entire slide is funded by grants and categorical funding, which it's just incredible the work. I have worked in education this is my 24th year in education, and I have never worked with somebody who's more able to get grants than Dr. Bhatia and the folks here in Cabrillo. It's amazing to me. So this is incredible. It's gonna be a lot of really good stuff going on for our youngest and students as well.
I just want to take a moment and also call out that Rosalba Segura also and her colleagues under Dr. Bhatia's leadership, have created the increase to our expanded learning professionals, which is what I called out with the consent agenda earlier. It was important for CSEA to have that as a job description, so I was happy that CSEA, normally we'd have Stig here, but I could thank him and his team and the new president, Diane Powley of CSEA. But it was really important that we were able to take that to bear, especially knowing that I've heard from other people saying, oh, you're out in front of this. You've been able to create that program. A lot of people are still trying to figure out that program. Mm-hmm. So a lot of credit has to go to Rosalba and to Leticia and to Bianca, I guess, and me working in service to them and making this vision possible.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I mean, we are so far ahead of the game in the state. So now you'll see the slide for the Chief Business Officer, and you can kind of see how I organized it. So we had the, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction, and then that second slide, because that next slide right there with all the early learning programs, that all reports to our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction. So our CBO, and you'll see here we have a couple of changes. We have the Technology Director. This is also under the consent agenda. It's no longer a certificated administrative position. It's now a classified administrative position. And as such, it needed to be consistent throughout all of our systems. And so these are the people who report there. And then you'll see that we have a financial director here rather than a director of finance, again, reflecting the classified nature of the work and the differences there. And so we have some consistency throughout. And then we have our maintenance, operations, and transportation supervisor, and that person will be reporting to our CBO, or does report to our CBO, and then these are all the folks there. And then we have the technology director, and these are the folks. Again, the technology director reports to the CBO. And then we have the superintendent. And that's it. Are there any questions? And
thank you so much for your presentation. One question I would have, and you may not have the answer right now, but where we have the blocks for classroom teachers, if we could go back and put numbers in there, or if we have a position and we know we have multiples. I realize that the public frequently asks, why do you need admins, or why do you need all of these different roles? And the reality is that we have many demands from the state, and especially with data and reporting requirements, and just the LCAP alone it's a huge requirement. And yes, there's value at the end of the day for our students, but I think it will help the public understand also, because when we see one box, we have a bunch of teachers too. And want to make sure that we kind of lift up, even for people to understand how many teachers per grade level might help. That would just be again, it's not a have to for tonight, but.
We can look on doing that. We wanted to present this, and it was my goal with the board to present an organization chart. We wanted to do it in broad strokes, but we can talk about how to present that on the website, because we will be posting this information on the website after this summer when we're starting to work on the website.
Yeah, if I could I understand that some people ask, because we're a small district, it's kind of like keeping a small fish tank alive. It's easier to keep a big one alive because you have more flexibility. We are constrained and we have many needs. You'll have all the same needs in a small district as you have in a large district. And I just want to say thank you for the concerted effort that you've put into attracting teachers and staffing all of these positions. And I think we're really in good stead going into the next year. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope so.
I just want to add, I agree. I think just having the FTE number is hugely helpful to just give context, because when somebody that doesn't understand that context looks at a org chart, they think, oh my God, there's so many boxes. And it's like, oh, there's just one box for teachers. It's like, actually, most of our numbers are there. So I think it's just especially for the non-expert, it will be helpful. But I'm also curious about how many expanded learning professionals do we have? Is it 2 or is it 10? I really have no idea. So I think where you see it's an appropriate time, if it's when you put on the website or the next time you come to us with that presentation, to just have the FTE numbers, I think that would be helpful. But even before that, sorry, I forgot to take my mask. Mask off.
That's okay, I can hear you.
I do, and because it reminded me, that was my first comment, to just appreciate that you brought that up and that you called it out, because I think there are a lot of subtle things, even that make kids feel comfortable at school or not comfortable at school, that we are open to these, and that we think about the broader perspective about how we do what we do. I really appreciate that you mentioned that. And I appreciate that you mentioned about the field trips, because I think our kids it's been such a hard year that it doesn't take much to make them happy. It really doesn't. Take them to an A's game. They might not even care about baseball. It doesn't matter. They're going on a bus. The bus driver is kind to them. He's treating them like gold. And they're out in the sun or in the rain or whatever. They're just having fun and being kids. I just can't thank whoever did that enough. And to you for bringing that to us as an example of kids just need to have fun at school. And as far as that's the stuff that they'll remember, right? And it's you stick in the vegetables, right? But you got to give them some at least a smoothie, if not a milkshake every now and again. So that's really cool. And especially as we think about how we come back to school in the fall, the more smoothies we can give them, make it fun, because kids want to have fun. I'm just remembering Cyndi Lauper, but that's because I'm an 80s kid. But, it's girls and boys and every non-binary, everybody wants to have fun. So thank you for calling out that example. Also, back to the hearing impairment piece too. I have been wondering if it's possible to have, when we do our videos, I've seen other videos with automatic, I don't know what you call it, closed captioning.
Yeah,
being
closed
added.
captions.
Yeah, closed captions being added in based on how we speak. So if we need to learn to speak more slowly so that the computer can do it better, if we can kind of look into closed captioning. So I always think it's helpful for people that maybe are also visual learners or aren't English speakers, firstly, to see things visually could be a useful assistance for our board meeting videos. Anyway.
Videos on YouTube can be closed caption, but I don't know if the live videos could generate that.
Okay,
but
something to look
for
into.
For sure, our YouTube videos have those.
Have the closed caption. Okay, great, thank you. So, yes, and just to say in general, thank you, because I think it is, again, to emphasize your point about how important it is to have clarity around roles and responsibilities, reporting structures, for that accountability and that position control, this is our greatest resource, is our staff. So we need to really know who's doing what and when, and make sure things are on track and that we're supporting people to do their best. So that's really great. My last question is, with the, I know we have our job, as we have new job descriptions approved or revisions approved, we get them in the board packet. At some point in the future, do you envision we'd have like a job library in our website or something where we could eventually be able to say, oh, what does a education specialist do? Or what does a reading intervention teacher do? And kind of like click on it and just go to like the latest and greatest job description.
Yeah, that's something that I think I've been already tasked to do, but it's certainly among the goals that I have for the 22. To be honest with you, there's a few other things that are like bigger projects that I want to make sure get done, and I don't want to bite off more than I can chew. So, and a project like we need to look at all the job descriptions, and a lot of them need a lot of revision and updating, and also the state has this new, the California Department of Education wants us to have job duties, which is a little bit different, job duty statements, and that's kind of where you get down more into the nitty gritty. And working on that is going to be, actually, I think it's actually going to be a really fun project, but it's going to be a lot of work, but it's going to be a really fun project. So I'm looking forward to having some time and space to be able to work on that. But I think there are other higher leverage issues that we should attend to right now that I really want to make sure that get attended to in the 22-23 school year. And that includes, celebrations of incredible work that we're doing to highlight and lift up the practitioners who serve the students. And also figuring out like what are appropriate accountability structures and making sure that we're adhering to all of that kind of stuff. And so that, as we shift out of the pandemic and into that celebration of that work, that we're also at the same time not developing, an indifference to accountability structures too, because it really matters. The work that we do really matters. To your point about celebrations of joy, I'm really excited because I've been working already with the new Cunha principal, Jeff. Sorry, I'm just a little nervous. But in any case, he and I, Mr. Clinton and I were on the phone last night, and he's in Chicago, but we're planning like an ice cream social for our students in the first month of school. So some really fun and interesting and different things that I just think that our kids, like you said, the kids need joy. They need joy, and especially right now.
I was just going to say, I think that pretty much sums it up. Kids need joy. Thank you.
Well, to your point, Ms. Lane, I will say just for the board and public, whoever's out there in TV land watching this, Ms. Forrester did have a couple more job descriptions to put on the agenda this time, and I said absolutely not. There will be more job descriptions getting refined in the year ahead. We've created some job descriptions, we've refined some job descriptions, but that will be work that Bianca is tasked and sort of chomping at the bit to do, and we look forward to doing that work. We're going to give you dribbles and drabbles of that over the next 12 months.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, you talked about joy and ice cream for the kids. I'm wondering about if what we do for teachers and for staff at the beginning of the year in terms of a kickoff. And I don't need full answer now, but something to think about, because I think that could be really rich and wonderful.
I think Dr.
They deserve it.
Yeah, no, I think absolutely all our staff deserve it. And I think Dr. Battio will be working with principals. We've already seen a presentation of the professional development plan for the kickoff for the next year, and I know our principals are looking to that. And I am also very pleased that Jeff Clinton comes from, in the room where we were meeting from closed session or right next door to it, he comes from this place. He knows this staff and is one of this staff. Erin O'Connor-Brown going to El Granada, a staff member from here. Amy McVicker was a CUTA member. Erin O'Connor-Brown until July 1, a CUTA member, Jeff Clinton also. So Andy Boysen also from the ranks, Deanna Tower from the ranks. We've got a lot, Danielle Robles from the ranks. So we've got a lot of principals now who are new principals, I think that's an important point, is that was what we were talking about in the retreat last week, is sort of saying what are the initiatives and the proposals that are key and focused to us in the beginning of the year. And there's that delicate balance of both end. We need to hold people accountable to what we believe in, which at the retreat was talking about English language learner support, positive behavior intervention support, multi-tiered systems of support, and talking about recognizing kids and doing that thing for social emotional wellness. Plus, we've also got to sustain each other and be kind to one another going forward. So it's a balance, but in the fall, I think we can talk about the professional development, the focus there.
And just a quick comment too, I would encourage our school leaders as well as district staff too to some extent, lesser extent, but to also feel free to I will invite them all to reach out to their PTOs and their ELACs, and Health and Wellness Committee I know is working closely with the high school administrators to support them in making sure that we can give students a warm welcome as they come back to campus, as well as the staff, but I think especially they're really close to the needs of the students and things that will be meaningful to them. And you know, certainly it's a little tricky at this time because kids aren't in school, but I know we can leverage our students as well, leadership groups, but also beyond to get the broader representation in terms of, you know, all that kind of support. I know our PTO colleagues and our ELAC colleagues will be very happy to help. So I would just put that out, that don't hesitate to reach out to get their support. Not only financial, but also, you know, boots on the ground, if you will.
Yeah.
So thank you, Bianca.
Well, just to talk about support and of the staff and students and families of the schools, you'll see in this org chart, and I kind of want to use this as the mic drop moment, we have added support where needed, particularly at the high school and the middle school because of climate and culture issues. That is something we will be ongoing focusing. It will require a change in work for our practitioners, whether they are, quite frankly, custodians, teachers, or leaders of schools. So there are changes being made. I mean, I was walking, on campus today. Our fences are near complete. There will be safety structures put on that are physical, and there will be safety structures that will be put on that are emotional. And I think the org chart actually represents sort of all that work. If you look at educational support services and the staffing up we've done for mental and medical health, that's important for us now. And so we're trying to put our money where our mouth is on this regard. And I will say, too, the fact that we created a position after much debate and much sort of concern to support Dr. Bhatia in the work to support particularly categorical programs and English language learner programs and looking at the data, that in context with our equity audit, I mean, I just want to point out the org chart is a representation and makes visible an investment that we have made. If you looked at it compared to a couple of years ago, you will see it is stronger. It is got added services, and that includes both at the teacher level as well as support staff and at administrator level.
I'll just add on to this, nothing new, but this is way more complicated than I thought it was, before I had this job. And I think it's good to be transparent about it and put it on the website because I think people don't understand that, the general public. And I do think it'd be really good also to put the job duties on there like you're saying you're going to do because, I had no idea how many things you guys do, So I think it's really important and it is surprising, and I think it's good to be transparent about it because, for instance, when Stig talked at our last meeting and he has 7 people under him or whatever it was, and thought, oh my gosh, it's so many. Why do we need so many? And then I thought, well, we have 3,000 students and, X number of employees. Yeah, that's a lot of work. But you don't really think about all that until you see it down there. So I'm really glad that you're going to do all that work and get it on the website and get the job duties on there. Because the whole thing, it's being transparent, and it is a heck of a lot more complicated than I think people understand. And there is a lot of work to it and a lot of things, you're required to do by the state. And I guess that's all I have. So I'm glad you're doing that. Thank you for all the work. Any other comments for Bianca? This is an informational item, so we'll leave it at that unless someone has more.
No, bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias. I would like to know who I report to. I'm just kidding. No, but thank you very much.
The public.
Thank you.
Well, it should be actually us reporting to you and you reporting to the kids, right?
Yeah,
So,
where's
yes.
our org chart?
Well, whenever anybody asks me, exactly, everybody knows that we serve at the pleasure of the board, and the board serves at the pleasure of the public. When I go to a school site and they say, who are you? I say, oh, I work for you. So,
I do have one more thought I forgot. When you said all those positions are grant positions, do you think we could put that on there too? I mean, it would be great for the public to understand how much money you're getting that we wouldn't otherwise have if people weren't making an effort to get these grants. So, I don't know if it's possible or you want to do something like grant funded, but I think it's something to think about.
maybe we can look at some color coding in the future, and we could figure out if we could color code based on, for example, the migrant services or English language learner services.
Well, in adult school, that doesn't come out of our budget.
Adult school does
right?
not at all, and I'm going to be happy that we're going to be welcoming our new adult school principal, Drew Gammett. We've talked about in previous meetings. You've actually seen him in a meeting. He'll be here next week, and yes, that comes from a consortium. That's their money. So we're excited about how that is, but no, that does not come out of the general fund.
Yeah, I agreed. It could be to have a very clear line of sight with the budget and the SACS report, kind of breaking it down on general fund, unrestricted funds versus everything else, which is general fund, restricted funds, other funds like the adult education fund, et cetera, food services fund, I guess maybe includes a lot of the food services staffing. I think it's just really, we think about our budget really in those ways. It's the general fund, unrestricted, and everything else is like for certain uses. So at some point in the future, I was thinking the same thing. I didn't want to ask because it's
too
so
much
much
to
already.
ask.
But like maybe it's next year or whatever, so people do understand where, because I think there is a misperception that all the money's going to all this stuff. It's like, yeah, no, really all this stuff is coming from specific funds for those things. Much as we shifted to a large extent from categorical funding to LCFF funding, we still have a lot of categorical funding. So.
And not to take away from this, these are beautiful
God,
and a lot of work, but, it's always exciting to see it and think, oh, what else can we do? So anyway, thank you very much. They're beautiful.
Yeah,
Is it-
if you have extra time, pictures and names, just kidding. I'm just,
Again, we do not want to get too fine grained with this, and I have asked Ms. Forrester to try to keep it very sort of broad stroke, but we will work on enhancements going forward for the next iteration next year. But there are certain priorities that I want to always keep Bianca focused on, which is hiring the next vacancy. So that's all of summer long. So,
And
woo!
it could be something that, again, in terms of explaining to families, this could be a very useful tool for the principals, like to basically say, okay, here at El Granada, when I'm giving my presentation at back to school night, I could just lift this thing and just share it to families. Again, anything we can do to demystify for families how school works, it's like, that's a huge opportunity, and it already exists.
Well, that actually does already exist. There's an internal document that has these numbers on it. So for example, if you were to look at these things and see, there are 0.2s and 0.4s and 0.6s where we have job shared positions. I specifically directed Bianca to take those numbers off. She had the number of teachers. So had I known, I would have had that reported, but we will provide the more internal document going forward for transparency and then let the comparisons begin.
Yeah, and even and that's fine, and there's always going to be, I think when we open ourselves up to that, it's just conversation. I was just thinking for like kind of the short term, tactically speaking, this is a great tool for principals, even without the numbers, to say, hey, parents at back to school night, here's who we have in our community, here's who we are.
Well, and I think the problem with getting too minutia in it is that it's got to be updated. And what's the best use of your time? Hiring people or updating all our org charts every
Thank you.
year because they're changing so much. So-
Thank you, President Nelson.
So, I mean, that's, we're throwing ideas out here, but, we're not giving you direction. We're giving ideas, and we're leaving it up to you to make the best decisions about how to use your time and go forward.
That said, I do think it is important while you're having this conversation, the thing that the board usually is tasked with is hiring and firing of the superintendent, which, by the way, you just did in the consent agenda tonight, right? Checking the budget, which we're about to do. You already had a public hearing and an in-depth presentation on that last time, and now tonight's the pro forma, so like approval of it, and the organization. So these are the things that a board is tasked with doing, and you're expected to do. So I think it is important for us to get your direction, and then we'll certainly follow through on it.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate all of you and getting to work with you. It's a real pleasure for me. I did just want to say in closing, demystification of what's happening, I think, is vital for relational trust in a district, and particularly in a district of our size. So that's one thing. And then I think, to your point, Board Member Hines, what you said about like, what kind of celebrations are we going to do for the teachers? Well, of course, I'm going to have an apron on and be serving them the ice cream too. That to me just goes without saying. So I didn't particularly surface that, but I think that it's such a good point that you're reminding us that we're really talking about celebrations of the wonderful things we do. And to your point, Board President, is that, we do need to celebrate the work that we do, and we do need to celebrate all of the grants that we're bringing in, because it is really extraordinary. And last night I was on the phone with our new director of La Costa about several grants that he told me that he's excited to apply for. And he was like, oh, I'm late to have a conversation with Dr. McFetridge, and I need to and I was like, no, he knows that you're on deck for this. You're the right person for this at this time, and we're really excited to have you be joining the team. And then I did just kind of circle back today with Sean in a 2-second conversation, just tell him, hey, FYI, by the way, this was some part of what we're discussing. So I think it's all happening, and I feel like we're moving in a really positive direction, and I'm really excited to be in a position to be able to support the really good things going on in Cabrillo.
So that was an information item. There was no action needed by the board on that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Forster. We'll move along then. Our next item is adoption of CUSD budget for the fiscal year 2022-2023.
There is no presentation of this per se, as I just kind of mentioned. This is a task of the board, and I think I was talking to our Pacifica colleagues here televising us, and they're like, oh, there are a lot of board meetings happening in June, right? Because every board is kind of meeting in June twice to review the LCAP and to review the budget. And so at the last meeting, you received sort of a comprehensive look at the budget. We did recommend a positive budget picture and approval with a, not a negative qualification, with a positive qualification, with the caveat that depends on where the taxes finally come in and assess values, and that is still an unknown. We have that estimated at 4%. With the 4%, people had said before with 2% we were too conservative. With the 4%, we do wind up having a squeaker, and in the multi-year third year, having an $18,000 reserve. I met with a teacher recently, and they were like, oh, Sean, we got to get salaries up and to be able to recruit and retain people, especially young teachers who might want to go up somewhere else for more money. And I said, we're played out. In the last 3 years, we've given in 1920 a 3% increase, 3% increase in 2021, and this last one was a 5.29%, $5,000 on every salary schedule for teachers, 5.29% for every other employee, plus a $2,000 bonus. So that's where negotiations wound up. through the mediation process after we went to impasse, and we kind of gave at the office, and I want to thank this board for doing so, but I will say just in shorthand, it will require, again, vigilance and scrutiny and caution in the next 3 years. We do sort of see with a 4% assessment or calculation that we would have a positive budget with a 5-digit reserve, $18,000, far from what we would hope to have. It's above the 3% restricted, economic reserve for economic uncertainty, but barely. So, tonight you would adopt the CUSD budget. We would recommend it. It is recommended at positive. You will see a budget report that is a long 100-page report of where all the money goes. I'm happy to take questions in the sort of like big picture version of that, but otherwise we would ask you to take this second step in June to adopt what you heard from Ms. Marsh, our interim CBO, at the last meeting.
I'll take a motion in a second, and then we can have discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Sophia, for seconding that.
Questions? Go ahead.
Just a comment, thank you, Sean, for that excellent recap of the big picture of where we stand. I think that's really, really important to know. Through the help of a lot of grant funding, particularly around COVID-19 over the past couple years, we have managed to keep our heads above water. But we are barely keeping our heads above water. And I think $18,000 on a $33 million budget, that's like, that could reverse itself like,
Squeaker.
That's a squeaker. That's like you have one overrun on a project where you're a little bit off in your estimate. That's like, could be minus 50, and we're all of a sudden not meeting our RAU requirements for the state. So I just really want to say, like, we are barely keeping our heads above water, and we just need to be so cautious about how we move forward and really make sure the position control is going to be a big help with that, given what 80 or 90% of our budget is going towards staffing. That's our biggest opportunity right there. So thank you, Bianca, for leading the charge. Thank you, Shaw, for bringing Bianca on to help us really get that under control, to make sure that every dollar we're spending is benefiting students, full stop. So thank you.
I just also want to give the counterpoint of this, right? I'll often hear from bargaining unit representatives, well, Sean, you never get into that bad place. School districts always say in the third year out, you're going to be like negative, but it never happens. It's important to remind everybody that when I came here 3 years ago, you were in it, and we had to get out of it. And then we got basic aid. And now I think we're adjusting to basic aid. I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic that the funding from the state will be very good. And so I want to surface this for the board and the public too. If you're following this kind of weird roller coaster that you have between the governor and the legislature, they're sort of arm wrestling and debating finer points about, no, these people should get more money, these people should get more money. As a basic aid district, that's all fine and well, but LCFF funding, local control funding formula, doesn't really impact us. We have an excess of that, and we're spending it. And still, because we're not a basic aid district like over the hill, it's not as much. Again, I spoke with a teacher at the high school who I have a great appreciation for. And, she told me, hey, we've got to do more. And I said, look, we're played out. We're going to continue over time to try to make this better. And I think that was evident by the board authorizing the raises that we eventually were able to settle on and negotiate. But going forward, we'll be hopeful, and we'll be optimistic, and we will be cautiously optimistic. And, hopefully we can continue to look at other ways to recruit and retain employees, whether that be through workforce housing or other things. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. We're in an okay place, and I'm sure there will be more money coming from the state. But again, remember, this is a banner budget, and yet even with those budget expectations, if the taxes don't come in, we don't have that much money. and we will use the categorical money. At the last board meeting, remember I said there would be maybe a categorical grant for one-time spending of $1,500 per student, which is tantamount to $4 million, almost $4 million for the district. To me, when we talk about a squeaker, or we're barely hanging on and almost underwater, that's our snorkel. That's sort of our rescue, that's our lifeline. So there will be some money coming that we will be able to use for some purposes. You know, I can expect, like in many districts, this will be a typical rhythm of trying to make ends meet and trying to do better by our employees and our families. I am very appreciative of the fact that we were able to work with the PTOs this year and add programs, and I want to thank Dr. Bhatia in particular, to increase the staffing at our libraries, at our elementary schools. It was a big thing for our PTOs. We didn't want that to be PTO funded either, so we sort of like took that on. And the visual and performing arts also, so that the PTOs wouldn't be paying for that as much. So we are just trying to work to balance and spread the money as it should to programs, services, employees, families, students. So yeah.
Well, and as it stands right now, looking at the budget, we're less than 0.5% in reserve the third year out. I mean, it's pretty tight.
When you did remember and this was a cause of consternation even among yourselves as a board 2 years ago, when Jesus Contreras, our chief business officer, and I brought you a policy to say that we should have a 12% reserve. But that is the state average for districts, basic aid or not. And if you look at districts over the hill, some of them have reserves for 20%. A lot of people, when we did that, and that to this day, they think of that as fighting words. You know, that money shouldn't be reserved. That money shouldn't be in a piggy bank. That shouldn't be in a rainy day fund. It's a rainy day now. And that's exactly what happened when we negotiated 5.29%, $5,000 for every teacher on every salary schedule, plus a $2,000 bonus for every employee this year. I think the board was good for it, but you are sailing close to the wind. And I recommended it, and you authorized it, and I hope people will remember going forward that we did so thinking it was good for the whole and good for the organization, and that we also took care of kids and families and our PTOs and their advocacy. But we will continue to watch this, and it will be an ongoing conversation, and I'm sure it will get offensive and defensive at times, and there it is there.
Okay, I think we're ready to vote.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Those opposed, please say no. 4-0. Passes.
Thanks, Rosie. Okay, our next agenda item is adoption of resolution number 16-22, temporary interfund borrowing for fiscal year 2021-22.
I promise not to wax philosophical on this item. This is a pro forma resolution, comes to us every year. It allows the business service department basically to borrow from one fund to another so we can make ends meet and keep everything in the black. And the train's running on time, and then basically the resolution also says that money will be replaced at another point so that we guarantee that the funds are used for what they are earmarked for. But this is a common accounting exercise for public school districts in June, in the second meeting of June, to be able to rob Peter to pay Paul.
Okay, this is an action item. I'll motion to approve. Can I get a second?
Thank you, Mary Beth. Thank you, Lisette.
Okay, any questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, I think we're ready to vote.
Okay, this is a roll call vote. Mary Beth?
Aye.
Raya is absent. Sophia?
Aye.
Kimberly?
Aye.
Lisette? Aye. Item passes 4-0.
Thanks, Rosie. Okay, our next agenda item is adoption of Resolution 17-2022, specifications of election order and approval candidate policy form and administrative contact and incumbent list form.
Yeah, so again, I won't get into the details. Everybody can see that, but if you look at the item 5E, this says board member November 2022 elections. That is for elections this November. The incumbents who will be up for reelection, should they run again, are Ms. Cortez, Ms. Alexander, and Ms. McCammon. So depending on if Lizette and Mary Beth and Freya run again, then this basically establishes that these are the seats that are open for the 2022 election. The resolution, which I have to thank Rosie for helping me with, I just get it from Mark Church, the assessor, in their office, and then I say, hey, Rosie, we got to do this again 2 years later. And it basically talks about specifications of the election order. What I will note for the public is that, like 2 years ago, we make it so that it's not 400 words of candidate statement, it's 200 words. We try to keep that short and succinct, basically for the public, but also it is a cost-saving measure. The other thing that we opt for is that instead of making candidates pay for election costs and being on the ballot and that language and counting up those words and the printing costs, the district pays for that. And we do that also because we think that's pro-democratic, because we know that running for election can sometimes be expensive for people. And then the third item, I think, on that specifications, the election order, as I recall, would be that if there is a tie, in the off chance, statistically almost impossible chance that you were to have an exact tie in the votes, that instead of going to the expense of having a runoff election, we would just do it by lot, which basically means you'd get the two candidates together in a room and you would flip a coin. Are you serious? I'm totally serious. Or you draw a lot. I guess lot actually is you draw a stick. So there'd be some way that we'd probably press a computer, or there's a way to do a spinner on a computer, or you'd flip a coin, or you'd draw a lot. But again, I find it very hard to believe that this would be necessary. Most people run and they win by at least a vote. So I don't need to wax on, wax off on this. So this is what it is, and we have to do this by this second meeting in June before an election, and we would hope that we would recommend approval.
This is an action item. Can I get a motion in a second, please?
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Sophia.
Discussion, questions, Kim?
I do. I have a comment. I really do appreciate the support in the election, like helping people like myself be part of the board, because that was always my number one thing. I always said I had time and I had the heart and the desire to be here, but I definitely did not have the money. So I really do appreciate that. Thank you. Maybe I might stay. I know so thank you.
Absolutely. We do think it is important, particularly for people who are hometown candidates and who may not have, the means to do all the campaigning and all that. It can be very expensive. And so we thought it is more democratic to be able to have the district pay for the costs of the election materials.
Okay. Rosie, I think we're ready to vote.
Okay, this is a roll call vote. Mary Beth?
Aye.
Freya is absent. Sophia?
Aye.
Kimberly?
Aye.
Lisette? Item passes 4-0.
Thanks, Rosie. Okay, future events. July 4th, Independence Day holiday, all sites are closed. July 8th, last day of summer school. August 11th will be the first day of school. And also on August 11th is our regular board meeting, the location to be determined, and it will start at 6 p.m. And now that I've eaten all these chocolates, and I only have this one left, we will finish the meeting.
We need a motion.
We need a motion in a second. I was so excited.
So moved.
Thank you, Kim. We have, thank you, Sophia. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for
All right, thank you. That's it. Thank you for coming.
Have a good summer. We'll see you in August.